Right now, as you're watching this video, somewhere on Earth, someone just cracked open a Coca-Cola. Actually, scratch that. Not someone. Millions of people. Every single day, human beings consume 1.9 billion servings of Coca-Cola. 1.9 billion. That's more than the entire population of China and India, combined, drinking a Coke every single day. And here's the part that should genuinely mess with your head. This all started with one guy, a pharmacist, in a small city in Georgia, who was just trying to cure headaches. No venture capital, no Silicon Valley pitch deck, no algorithm, just a bubbling pot of syrup in a backyard lab, and a drink that somehow conquered the entire planet. So how does that happen? How does a headache remedy invented in 1886 become the most recognized brand in human history? More recognizable than McDonald's, more recognizable than Apple, more recognizable than the flag of most countries. That's what we're going to find out today. Because the story of Coca-Cola isn't just a business story. It's a story about war, about manipulation, about brilliant accidents, about one of the biggest corporate disasters in history, and about how a single bottle of brown fizzy liquid became the symbol of an entire century. Stick with me. This one's going to be good. Let's go back. Way back. The year is 1886. The American Civil War ended just 20 years ago, and Atlanta, Georgia is still rebuilding. The city is dusty, ambitious, a little desperate, and it's going through something that a lot of southern cities were going through at the time. A massive push to ban alcohol. Prohibition was in the air. And this created a very specific problem for a man named Dr. John Pemberton. Pemberton was a pharmacist and an inventor. The kind of guy who was always mixing things together, always chasing the next big remedy. He had a popular drink at the time called French wine coca. Basically wine mixed with cocaine extract from coca leaves. People loved it. It sold well, and then Atlanta passed local prohibition legislation, and suddenly, Pemberton's bestseller was illegal. So he did what any reasonable scientist/businessman would do. He stripped out the alcohol, kept the cocaine, added some other ingredients, and started over. The result was a thick, sweet syrup that he mixed with plain water. He brought it to Jacob's Pharmacy on Peachtree Street, one of the most popular soda fountains in Atlanta, and on May 8, 1886, the world's first glass of Coca-Cola was poured. It sold for 5 cents a glass. And on that first day, this empire, this 1.9 billion servings per day global phenomenon, sold about 9 drinks. 9. Now, the name. Pemberton didn't come up with it. His bookkeeper, a man named Frank Robinson, did. Robinson looked at the 2 main ingredients, coca leaf extract and cola nut, and wrote out Coca-Cola in the flowing cursive script that, with almost 0 changes, is still the logo today. One bookkeeper, one afternoon, one piece of paper. That's your billion-dollar logo. Pemberton then started marketing it. And this is where it gets truly fascinating for anyone from the modern era. He marketed it as medicine. His original ads called Coca-Cola a remedy for headaches, nausea, and fatigue. He claimed it was a brain tonic, a nerve stimulant, and honestly, he wasn't entirely wrong. The drink contained cocaine from coca leaves and caffeine from cola nuts. It absolutely would have done something to your nervous system. But here's what I find genuinely wild about this part of the story. Pemberton had no idea what he had. He was thinking small. He was thinking pharmacy counter, local sales, maybe some modest income. He was not thinking global empire. He was not thinking Super Bowl ads. He was just a pharmacist trying to replace his banned wine drink. Sometimes the biggest things in history start with the smallest ambitions. If you find this kind of stuff fascinating, the weird, hidden origins of things we take for granted, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We do this every week. You won't regret it. Pemberton would die just 2 years later, in 1888, before he ever got to see what his syrup would become. Before he died, he sold off pieces of his business to several buyers, including the majority stake to a local Atlanta businessman named Asa Griggs Candler. And that is where the real story begins. Asa Candler paid somewhere around $2,300 for the rights to Coca-Cola. In today's money, that's roughly $75,000. For what would become one of the most valuable brands in the history of capitalism. To be fair to whoever sold it to him, nobody knew. Nobody could have known. By 1892, Candler had consolidated full control of the formula and the brand, and he formally incorporated the Coca-Cola Company on January 29th of that year. And then, almost immediately, he started doing something that nobody in business was really doing at the time: aggressive, creative, borderline obsessive marketing. Candler's first move was coupons. In 1887, yes, 1887, he started distributing free sample coupons for Coca-Cola. This sounds basic now, but at the time, giving away your product for free to get people hooked was genuinely radical thinking. It worked. People tried it. People came back and paid for it. Then he started putting the Coca-Cola logo on everything: clocks, aprons, fans, calendars, trays, serving glasses. He gave all of this branded merchandise away to pharmacies and soda fountains for free, on the condition that they displayed it prominently. Coca-Cola became visually unavoidable. Drop a comment below. Have you ever kept a branded item from a company? Like a tote bag, a mug, anything? Because Asa Candler basically invented that entire strategy in 1887. Meanwhile, Candler also made a business decision that would define Coca-Cola's growth for the next 100 years: the franchise bottling system. Here's how it worked. Candler sold the syrup concentrate to independent bottlers around the country. Those bottlers would then carbonate it, bottle it, and distribute it locally. Candler didn't have to build bottling plants everywhere. He didn't have to manage logistics across the entire country. He just had to make the syrup and let the network do the rest. It was brilliant. It was scalable. And it is, in its basic form, exactly how Coca-Cola still operates today. In 1894, a Mississippi businessman named Joseph Biedenharn became the first person to put Coca-Cola in a bottle. Before that, it was only served at soda fountain counters, mixed fresh on the spot. Bottling changed everything. Now Coke could travel. Now it could be taken home. Now it could go anywhere. And it did. By 1895, just 9 years after that first glass at Jacob's Pharmacy, Coca-Cola was being sold in every single state in the United States. Think about that. No internet, no social media, no TV, no radio. In 9 years, through word of mouth, clever marketing, and a really effective syrup, this drink reached every corner of a continent. Candler had turned a pharmacist's headache remedy into a national phenomenon. But he was still thinking nationally. The next generation would think globally. In 1919, Candler sold the Coca-Cola Company for $25 million to a group of investors led by a man named Ernest Woodruff. Not a bad return on a $2,300 investment, but it's Ernest's son, Robert W. Woodruff, who would truly transform Coca-Cola into a global force. Robert Woodruff became president of the company in 1923, and he had a very simple, very ambitious philosophy. Coca-Cola should be within arm's reach of every person on Earth. Not every American, every person on Earth. The international expansion had actually started earlier. The first overseas bottling plants opened in Panama and Cuba in 1906. But under Woodruff, it accelerated dramatically. By 1929, Coca-Cola had operations in 27 countries across 5 continents. And then, Woodruff made a move that was pure genius, sponsoring the Olympic Games. In 1928, at the Amsterdam Olympics, Coca-Cola became an official sponsor, sending 1,000 cases of Coke to accompany the American team. It was the beginning of one of the longest corporate partnerships in sports history, and it gave Coca-Cola something incredibly valuable: association with the world's greatest athletic event, in front of a global audience, every 4 years. Think about that as a marketing investment. You're not just selling a drink. You're attaching your brand to the Olympics, to speed, strength, competition, human excellence. That's not advertising, that's identity. By the way, Coca-Cola is still a FIFA World Cup sponsor in 2026, this very year. That partnership has been running for nearly a century. Remarkable. The move that arguably had the biggest cultural impact happened not on a sports field, but in a magazine. In 1931, Coca-Cola hired a commercial illustrator named Haddon Sundblom to create Christmas advertisements. And Sundblom painted something that would permanently change how the Western world pictures Santa Claus. Before Sundblom's paintings, Santa Claus existed in various forms, sometimes thin, sometimes elf-like, sometimes stern. Sundblom created the version we all know today: rotund, jolly, rosy-cheeked, wrapped in a warm red suit, holding a bottle of Coke while delivering gifts or reading children's letters. The paintings were so warmly rendered, so full of domestic comfort, that they essentially locked in a single image of Santa for the entire English-speaking world. Now, and I want to be honest here, Coca-Cola did not invent the red-suited Santa. The fat, jolly figure in red had roots going back to Thomas Nast's illustrations in the 1800s. But what Coca-Cola did was standardize him. Before television, before color film, these magazine ads and billboards were many people's primary exposure to a visual Santa. And the Sundblom version was so dominant, so widely seen, so emotionally resonant, it became the default. This is something I genuinely think is underappreciated. Coca-Cola didn't just sell a drink. For most of the 20th century, Coca-Cola was actively shaping culture, deciding what icons look like, deciding what the holidays feel like. That's a level of brand power that most companies can't even dream of, and they were just getting started. If you're enjoying this deep dive, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people, and it takes literally 1 second. 1 click, just like ordering a Coke. Now we get to the part of the Coca-Cola story that honestly blew my mind the first time I really understood it. Because World War II didn't slow Coca-Cola down. World War II made Coca-Cola into a global empire. Here's how it happened. When the United States entered the war in 1941, American troops were deployed across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. And Robert Woodruff, the same man who had brought Coke to 27 countries in the 1920s, made an extraordinary promise. Every American soldier, anywhere in the world, should be able to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, no matter where they were, no matter what it cost the company. The U.S. government, understanding the morale value of this, granted Coca-Cola a special exemption from wartime sugar rationing as long as the product was going to military personnel. Other beverage companies didn't get this exemption. Coca-Cola did. What followed was one of the most aggressive infrastructure build-outs in corporate history. Coca-Cola constructed more than 60 portable bottling plants and shipped them, along with the equipment, the syrup, and the technicians to run them, to war zones across the globe. North Africa, Italy, France, England, islands in the Pacific. Wherever American soldiers went, a Coca-Cola operation followed. Think about what this meant strategically. Coca-Cola was essentially getting the U.S. military to subsidize its global infrastructure. The wartime plants weren't just serving soldiers. They were establishing Coca-Cola's physical presence in countries where it had never operated before. Countries where people were seeing and tasting this drink, this American drink, for the very first time. When the war ended, those 60-plus plants didn't get dismantled. They became the foundation for Coca-Cola's post-war commercial network. The numbers tell the story. In 1942, Coca-Cola sold 32 million cases. By 1950, Just 8 years later, that number had exploded to 200 million cases, a more than six-fold increase in a decade, powered in no small part by the infrastructure laid down during wartime. And here's one of the great ironic footnotes of food history. During the war, Coca-Cola's German branch ran into a problem. The Nazi government had cut off imports, which meant they couldn't get the syrup or ingredients they needed to make actual Coca-Cola. So the German team, led by an executive named Max Keith, improvised a new drink using whatever was available: whey from cheese production, apple fiber left over from cider pressing. They called it Fanta. Let that sink in for a moment. Fanta, which is now sold in over 190 countries, which you can buy in any convenience store on Earth, was invented by the German branch of Coca-Cola during World War II because they couldn't get the ingredients for actual Coke. The world is genuinely stranger than any story you could make up. Drop a comment below. Did you know Fanta was created during World War II? I'm genuinely curious how many people know this. Now we need to talk about 1985. Because everything we've covered so far, the pharmacist, the bookkeeper's logo, the wartime bottling plants, the Olympic sponsorships, the Santa Claus, all of that was Coca-Cola building, growing, winning. 1985 is the year Coca-Cola almost destroyed everything it had built in 79 days. To understand what happened, you need to understand the context. By the early 1980s, Pepsi was gaining ground, seriously gaining ground. They had launched something called the Pepsi Challenge, a nationwide campaign of blind taste tests where ordinary people would sip 2 unlabeled cups of cola and choose their favorite. And consistently, in test after test, people were choosing Pepsi. Pepsi ran the results as ads. Bold, provocative, brutally effective ads. People prefer Pepsi over Coke, the real thing, the 99-year-old institution. Coca-Cola's leadership panicked. And when giant corporations panic, they make giant mistakes. The decision was made to change the formula, to reformulate Coca-Cola for the first time in its history, to make it slightly sweeter, slightly smoother, more in line with what the taste tests were showing people preferred. They tested the new formula on 200,000 people. The new formula won. They were confident. On April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola announced New Coke, the first formula change in 99 years. The public reaction was not what anyone expected. It was immediate. It was furious. It was irrational in the best possible way. Within 24 hours, the company's complaint hotline was overwhelmed. They were receiving 8,000 calls a day from people who had not even tried New Coke yet. They were just angry that the old one was being replaced. People started stockpiling cases of original Coke. A guy in Seattle bought $1,000 worth of old Coke and was selling it out of his car trunk at a markup. A group of loyal Coke drinkers in Georgia literally formed a protest organization called the Society for the Preservation of the Real Thing. Some people poured New Coke down the drain. Some wrote letters to the Coca-Cola Company as if they were writing to a close friend who had betrayed them. The comedian Billy Joel publicly declared it a national tragedy. One man sent a telegram to the CEO that read, "You have turned your back on me." Here's what I think is the most fascinating thing about this entire episode. And this is genuinely my take, so tell me if you disagree. Coca-Cola made a completely logical mistake. The taste tests were real. The data was real. New Coke did taste better in a blind sip test. But a sip test is not how people drink Coca-Cola. Nobody just takes one sip of Coke with no context, no branding, no memory, no emotional association. When you drink a Coke, you're drinking every Coke you've ever had. You're drinking the one at your first baseball game, the one your grandfather had in the fridge, the one you had after a long summer day. You're drinking 100 years of identity and culture and memory. Coca-Cola tried to optimize the liquid, but the brand was never really about the liquid. It was about everything the liquid represented. And the moment they touched the formula, they broke that spell. And people felt it, even before they tasted the new version. 79 days after launching New Coke, Coca-Cola brought the original formula back. They called it Coca-Cola Classic. The press conference announcing the return was covered like a national news event. People cheered. Literally cheered. Sales of Coca-Cola Classic surged to their highest levels in years. And here's the really wild coda. Some marketing analysts have suggested, and Coca-Cola has always denied this, that the whole thing might have been an accidental masterstroke. That by taking Coke away, they reminded the entire world how much they loved it. Whether it was a disaster that accidentally became a triumph, or a genius plan that was brilliantly executed, nobody actually knows. And that ambiguity is kind of perfect for a brand built on a secret formula. New Coke was quietly discontinued in 2002. Almost nobody noticed. So where does that leave us? 138 years after a pharmacist in Atlanta mixed some coca leaves and cola nuts into a syrup and sold 9 glasses of it in one day, Coca-Cola is everywhere. More than 200 countries, over 500 brands under the Coca-Cola umbrella, including Sprite, Fanta, Dasani, Minute Maid, and Costa Coffee. A dividend that has increased every single year for more than 60 consecutive years, earning it a place among what investors call dividend kings. 1.9 billion servings consumed every single day. And the brand is still evolving, still adapting, still occasionally stumbling forward in interesting ways. In 2024, Coca-Cola released its annual Christmas truck advertisement, the one that has been a holiday tradition in Europe and America since 1995. The red truck rolling through a snowy village to the sound of "Holidays Are Coming," the ad that, for many people, genuinely signals the start of Christmas. Except in 2024, they made it with artificial intelligence. No real actors, no real Santa. A generated AI-rendered world. The backlash was immediate. Viewers felt something was missing, that the warmth was gone, that it felt hollow. People complained on social media in the thousands, which is, and I find this genuinely poetic, almost exactly what happened in 1985. Same company, same instinct to optimize, to modernize, to use the best available technology. Same result, audiences feeling like something irreplaceable had been taken from them. Some brands are so deeply embedded in human culture that you can't touch them without people feeling it. Coca-Cola is one of those brands. Maybe the ultimate example of one of those brands. And it started with 9 glasses of cocaine-laced syrup sold by a pharmacist who just wanted to cure headaches. The world is genuinely a strange and wonderful place. If you made it all the way to the end, first of all, thank you. Seriously, that means a lot. Second, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't yet, because we do exactly this kind of thing every single week. The hidden histories, the strange origins, the stories behind the things you think you already know. And leave a comment telling me, which Coca-Cola product is your favorite? Coke Classic? Fanta? Sprite? Something else? No wrong answers, just curious. Until next time.